Hi, this is Linda and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm putting together my Project Life spread for the week of August 4th through August 8th, 2024. This was in the middle of my European vacation, and this spread includes 2 stops, both Prague and Vienna. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so this was the week, and I say week, but it's not really a week. It was less than a week that I was in Prague and Vienna. So I spent a few days in Prague, and then I took a quick train over to Vienna. I spent a few days in Vienna. My main purpose for being in Vienna was to see the Taylor Swift concert, which was canceled due to terrorist attack. Or suspected terrorist attack. It was stopped. So I didn't get to see the concert, but I'm still documenting my trip and I'm documenting what actually happened there. So I decided to combine both of these cities into one spread because I was only in Vienna for, I think, like a day and a half, and then Prague was maybe 2 days. So it's only the 4th through the 8th. It's less than a week. I have a lot of photos though, because it is travel and these are beautiful cities. So what I decided to do is I'm going to split these into one spread, but I'm going to put an insert. So this half is going to be Prague and this half is going to be Vienna. So I'm going to just kind of lay out my photos first. So this was the back of my Berlin spread, which was all 3x4s. So I put the insert to have all 4x6s so I could have some more 4x6s for Prague. Since this side is all 3x4s and I wanted to have at least some horizontal photos. Let's see here, I'm gonna put maybe like that. I don't know, I'll rearrange as I go. And then on this side, I have my photos from Vienna, and this one has more 4x6 spots, which is fine because I actually wanted to include some more 4x6 photos and cards. So I was going through my stash to figure out what I wanted to use for this. For the Berlin spread, I used a travel collection, but what I came across is not a travel kit at all, but the old Census Story Kit from May 2022, which I never actually used or planned or anything. So what I'm gonna do is pull this kit out and use this kit to document this trip. Now, this is not necessarily very much like Sense specific, but you can use the census to really document anything. So I'm going to use this kit as my jumping off point. These big numbers though, I don't think are gonna work, so I'm gonna put those aside. And I'm gonna go through the cards first. So I took a peek in here before doing this, and this is kind of what prompted was some of these 4x6 cards. So let me go through those first. So this is the one, making sense of it. So I wanted to use this one to document the cancellation of my concert. So I'm gonna journal on there about that. Just because this makes sense now doesn't mean it always will. I originally was thinking I'd use that to document it, but I think it will make more sense in the long run that it was canceled. It was just very disappointing at the time. Sense of self, not really for this. And then let's see, the world is full of magic things, patiently waiting for our senses to grow sharper, which I think is a good just like travel quote. So I'm gonna put this one over here, and I'm probably gonna add Vienna on there, and I'm gonna add Prague, the word Prague over here somewhere. This makes 0 sense. I could definitely use that for Vienna, but I think I need another journaling. Sensing something really good coming soon. Total nonsense, and here's why. That could work, but I'm documenting the concert here, so I'm thinking I want to document the rest of our visit, and I don't know that any of these are going to work, so that's okay. I can make one. Let's see, what do we have here? So cozy, heart eyes, sounds good, tasty. Maybe I'll do like heart eyes on white cardstock and do some journaling. We'll see. And then, although I do have, there's also the pattern papers that could be cut up to create like a background. So maybe I'll do that. I think I might like this pink behind that heart eyes. Okay, so then on this side, I need a title card. So I'm thinking, I was working on that side. I don't know why I didn't do these at the same time. And then let's see, let's look at the 4x6s again, because I do have a 4x6 spot here. I could do this one, but not sure. I might want to do something just a little less prompt based, which is fine. Just because I'm using a prompted kit doesn't mean everything has to be prompts. Okay, so these little cards are about your senses, and I was thinking this might be fun to use these to document Prague from a specific sense, like a sensory perspective. Smelling, I don't know that I really have anything for that, but seeing, definitely, there's 2 of those. Tasting for sure, and hearing I can do about the bell tower. So I was thinking I could put like 2 of these together. So I'm gonna do like this and this here, and then tasting for the food. We didn't really touch, but we can do seeing again. And then sensing, maybe I can come up with something for touching. Or I could use touching for like moving, right? So maybe I'll do something like that. Tasty, put that on there. So cozy probably doesn't really work. Yum does though. Do I like yum more than tasty? Maybe. Yeah, I think I'm gonna put yum there. And then let's see. I need something here, and I think I just want like a longer, I want to put the word Prague on there somehow. So I'm going to figure out how to do that. Let's see, there were some 3x8s. What do these have? This is numbers. I don't think I want to use that one. Here's another pattern card. And then there's the chipboard pieces. So I could definitely use some of these on here as well. So I'm going to put this stuff, the rest of this aside, and you know what, I might use a story. I'm thinking of cutting up one of these to make like a title that works for me. And then what's this one? Currently sensing. Those I think I want to keep together. So I'm gonna go ahead and put you guys on fast forward and start getting this spread put together.
Okay, so this one actually took me much longer than most spreads, and I think part of that is the insert, so there's just more pockets to fill, and part of that is just the fact that I do a lot of journaling, which you will see towards the end of the video. The first step for me is always finding something to fill every single pocket. So I have a loose idea for most of my pockets, you can tell, but some of them I needed a base. So I cropped some white cardstock from my stash to fill those pockets, specifically that one that says heart eyes in the bottom right. And then I was deciding what was I going to put behind these like senses cards on the left-hand side. I tried the papers from the kit first because that's my initial place to pull from. I decided it was just too busy, but I also didn't want just plain white cardstock. So I went into my stash and found these like gridded ones that were, I think this is maybe from Cocoa Daisy or Felicity Jane. It's an older paper. I actually don't know where it's from. I'm sorry. But it's just a cute little grid. So I cropped some 3x4 cards and I'm going to put that behind those senses cards. I'm cropping down one of the 6x8 papers from the kit. It's like this pink polka dot to be a background for the top of this card. So I'm making my own journal card here just with a white 3x4 piece of cardstock and then the strip of this pattern paper. And then I'm going to put the gold word that says heart eyes on the top of it. And later in the video, I'm going to take a few of the pieces from the spread and bring them over to my sewing machine to add stitching, and this will be one of those. I'm just adding some rolling adhesive in a few random spots. I know I'm going to stitch it down which is really going to hold it securely in place. But I do need some rolling adhesive so that it doesn't shift when it goes in the sewing machine. And honestly, it probably would have been sufficient without sewing it to keep it in place. But I just like the way that the sewing looks. It adds a little bit of extra texture. For these cards here, I'm going to adhere them down, but you can see when I put them like so that they fit on the card, it pretty much takes up the entire spot and you can't even see the black and white grid behind it. And I wanted some of it to show, so I did make them kind of going off the edge and just making sure to not cut into the words that are on them and just cropping it down so that they fit in the pockets. So these I have selected hearing, seeing, tasting, seeing, sensing, and touching. And I'm going to loosely use those as prompts when I do my journaling, but I'll do my journaling at the end of the spread. I tend to do all of my journaling at the end, probably because it's my least favorite part. Not that I don't like it, but my hand tends to get tired and it's time consuming. So I like to do all of like the fun crafty stuff first. I also, for a spread like this though, I struggle because there's so much to write. My hand gets tired. So you'll see in the end, like how I kind of struggle with that. So I probably should have spaced it out more. If I was doing this again, I would probably start doing some of my journaling at this point so that I could space it out throughout the project. But for now, I'm just adhering these down and just kind of trying to make my base for every single pocket, which is kind of my process where you see, I pick my photos and I put them in. I pick loose cards for each one, and then I fill a base for each pocket. Now I'm moving on to my title card here. I'm just using another one of these like sensing cards, and I just cut the word off to add a label on here that kind of coordinates with the spread. And I'm just going to use this to put my rolling date stamps. I understand that like was wasting one of the cards, but that's okay. After using 6 of them on the spread, I'm okay if I waste one, because otherwise it's just going to go back in my stash and who knows when I will use it. I pulled one of the chipboard pieces from the kit and put it on there just to add something else, and also because that label just had a lot of blank white space that I wanted to fill a little bit. And so I added that on there. Some of the chipboard pieces in this kit were just fun patterns, and so I was happy that I didn't have to worry about the theme. I'm adhering the yum word directly on this photo of my sandwich, which was the most delicious food that we had in Prague. It was so good. And so I'm going to use the tasting card to journal about the food in Prague, specifically about the sandwich, but also some of the other meals and things that we ate while we were there. I liked using the senses prompt to tell the story of travel, because travel can be kind of difficult, especially in something like Project Life, to kind of narrow down your stories. There's just so much to say. And I definitely could have just been like, this is what we did in this chronological order. And that for sure works. But I also wanted to kind of capture the essence of what happened without worrying about capturing every single detail, because, well, for one, I'm documenting this trip elsewhere. I'm going to do a mini album. Not really mini, but I'm going to do an album to document this vacation. And I also documented it pretty extensively in my journal while on the trip. So I'm okay if this spread doesn't capture every single detail, but rather a highlight of the memory. I also like using the prompt for senses to tell the story, because it just helps you see it from a different perspective and kind of just like organize your thoughts in a different way, which worked pretty well for this one. I didn't end up using all of the senses, but having like tasting and saying, okay, this is going to be the prompt about everything related to food was really great. Now I'm working on building a card to go in that 4x6 pocket. So I'm again going to trim down white cardstock, and then I'm going to trim down more of that pink paper, which matches the card I made on the right-hand side that has the heart eyes on it. But this time I'm going to put the title Prague. Because this is a travel spread and I have 2 different travel destinations during this week, I wanted to make clear what those 2 destinations were. In the previous spread, I documented while we were in Berlin. So I put the word Berlin up near my title card. But in this one, I didn't want to put it on my title card because I'm documenting 2 different locations. So I kind of wanted to put one on the left side, which is Prague, and then Vienna on the right. For Prague, what I did is I'm going through a stack of my recent Alphas Are Awesome stamps to pick an alpha stamp that I really like. And I'm going to stamp out the letters to Prague on white cardstock. If you watched my videos before, you know I tend to do this on vellum really often and then cut it out and stitch it down. In this case, I decided to do it on white cardstock because it's going to go on top of that pink background paper. And I thought that vellum might, because that pink is kind of dark and it's kind of busy with those polka dots, I thought that the vellum letters might get lost a little bit. So the white is going to help them pop out. However, using the white does make it a little harder to cut them out. So that is something you have to keep in mind, because when you're doing on vellum and cutting them out, you don't have to be as precise. When I do cut these out, I purposefully leave a white border because I don't want the black ink of the stamp right next to the pink of the background. Otherwise, I could have just stamped directly on there. But that white is going to provide a little bit of contrast to help this word kind of pop out. So I'm going to speed this up quite a bit while I cut these out, because otherwise this video would be very, very long and I don't have a ton to say about fussy cutting. And I didn't even capture it on camera, most of it, because it's kind of hard to cut these detailed things without putting it right in front of your face, right? So I'm just cutting them out and I'm watching TV while I do this and just kind of enjoying the process. Okay, so once I finish cutting all of these out, I'm going to adhere them down on this pink background. And again, this is going to be another card that I stitch through, which I will do a little bit later in the video. I like to pull out my sewing machine on a lot of these spreads and any of my scrapbook pages. It's one of my favorite kind of go-to tools, but it definitely adds a little bit of time and effort to the spread. So when I'm wanting to like craft quickly, I tend to not do it, but I was really enjoying taking my time with this spread, and I actually came back to it a couple of times and just kind of left it out on my desk. I took like a dinner break and came back later. So you will see a little bit later in the video, the light is going to shift, and that is why. I typically complete these spreads in one sitting, but occasionally I don't, especially when I'm doing one that's more time intensive like this, with the stamping and the cutting and the stitching and all of the journaling. It definitely took much longer this time. Maybe like 2 hours, I want to say. This piece here that says a story came from one of those 3x4 cards. It had the different senses on it to tell the story from all of the different senses, but I didn't want to do that here because I already did that with those story cards on the left and I felt like that would be too much. So I just cut the story off to just kind of title that Prague card, and I left the rest of that card in with the kit to use on a different project. On this card here, so I'm flipping over to the Vienna side and making my Vienna title, I decided to use this quote card as a title card for Vienna because it's a very good travel related prompt. Even though it was from the census kit, it really made me think about travel. And I decided to pull over some white stickers, alpha stickers. These are from Kelly Perky. From her older shop, and just write the word Vienna on there going along the edge of that circle. And I really like the contrast of the white on that dark card. Now I'm just kind of trying to decide what else I want to include and do on this spread. And I decided I needed some sort of embellishment on some of my photos. So I went over to my stash and pulled out some word phrase strips. I decided to pull all neutrals because this spread already has so many colors with the bold colors of the census kit and then all of my photos. So I thought bringing neutrals would be pretty good. I tried to pick ones that had some like travel related prompts, but also just like everyday life ones. And I'm just selecting a few of my photos to stack some word strips on. I ended up doing it on 4 photos on the entire spread. I didn't want to overdo it and like put on every single photo, and I'm trying to do it on ones where I feel like it's not disrupting the photo. So like in the bottom of my left spread there, it might be hard to tell on video, but that is a photo of a book tower that is in Prague, and you can like look into the tower built of books, and it looks like it's infinity because there's a mirror at the bottom. So there's a photo of me. You can see me looking in the tower, taking that photo. And I thought that that was just so pretty and neat that I didn't want to put anything on top of that photo. I will most likely blow up that photo to put in another scrapbook spread in my Mini-Me album, and on that one I might put something on top of it, but this one I wanted to leave it plain. Instead, I chose other photos to put the word phrase strips on where it wouldn't detract from the photo. There you saw the light change because it's later in the day. So I end up shifting around those photos a little bit later so that the word phrase strips aren't touching or on photos that are next to each other. Now what I had done was I took all of these cards that had the gold words on them and that Prague word, and I took it over to my sewing machine and I stitched them down with a couple of rows of white thread. I tend to leave white thread in my sewing machine, even though I would like to mix it up in some of these spreads. That is just something where I've decided is just a little too time consuming to switch the thread between projects, and I'm just not going to do it that often. So I tend to leave just white. Maybe for like December daily or a specific project, I might pull out a different color thread, but generally I'm going to just use white. And it tends to provide the right amount of color and contrast for my spread. On this card here, I decided I wanted something else to add a little bit of texture. So what I'm doing is just using my paper piercer to poke a hole on each side of where it says a story. And then I'm going to put some little brads in there. I pulled some from my stash that are they're like a brown or like a copper, but it's like a dark copper, and I thought that it worked really well with the colors of this spread and just the old world feel of Prague itself, which is what I'm documenting. So at this point, I'm ready to do my journaling, and I was kind of like not wanting to do it. I don't know. Sometimes I do like to journal, but I think when there's just this much handwritten journaling, it's just a lot. So what I ended up doing was starting with the tasting card. So because there's so many different spots to journal on this spread, I'm going to start with the more specific ones first. So these are the prompt-based ones where I have to really think about what fits that prompt. So the tasting one, I journaled all about the food we ate in Prague. Then I'm moving on to the hearing one where I'm documenting the clock tower in Prague, which is one of the main tourist sites or things to see if you ever visit Prague. It's the astronomical clock that's right in the center of the town, or like the old town portion of Prague. And part of that was hearing it go off at the hour. And we saw that 1 hour and saw like it has like a whole display that goes on. So I documented that. Then I moved on to this main journaling card about Prague, where I just did the overall kind of, this is where we went and when we were there and why we were there and the overall feel of the city. And just like our overall perspective, because I've never been to Prague before and I probably will never get there again in my life. So it was just kind of a reflection on the city overall before moving on to some of those other cards. At this point, my hand was starting to hurt, so I decided to take a break from journaling and I decided to add something else to my photos. So I went to my stash and pulled out these puffy heart stickers and added them on top of where the word phrase strips are stacked on my photos. And you can see I'm rearranging my photos there. And I did that because I didn't want that photo of me right next to the photo of the library because they both had word phrase strips on them. And I really wanted those cards not to be touching. I also am going to end up putting some of these hearts in the O's on this So Cozy, which I put on the photo of our hotel room in Vienna. And I really, really love how that one comes out. I think that's my favorite card in this spread. Then I think I'm going to get ready to do a little bit more journaling at this point. So I'm moving on to the rest of these senses cards, and here, this one is seeing. So I just kind of did a recap of what we saw on the first day while we were there. And then the second seeing card, which is in the middle of the spread, I'm going to journal about what we saw on the second day while we were there, because we really had just 2 days. At that point, after I do both of these journaling cards, I pretty much recapped everything from Prague, but I still had 2 more journaling cards. So for the sensing one, I decided to, so in the bottom left there, I have sensing and touching left. So I decided to kind of use these prompts as jumping off points. So the first one on sensing, I did like the fact that I thought that Prague was a super neat city and super cool, but way too crowded. So I was kind of just doing like, I had a sense that the secret is out on Prague because it was so crowded, and just kind of some of my thoughts on how we made that work with getting out early and buying tickets in advance. So if you're planning a trip to Prague, I highly recommend planning on getting up and getting going early, and also buying your tickets online in advance, because we did not buy tickets in advance for one thing, the Clementium, which is that library that is on that 4x6 card on my insert there, which is super cool, definitely worth seeing. But we had to stand in line for like 2 hours to get timed tickets, and then we had to come back like 4 hours later to get them. And a lot of people showed up and they were all sold out. We were just there early enough to get in line and get our tickets. Then on the touching one, I decided to kind of talk about how this was such a memorable experience, which is kind of like touching, right? Where it was like moving to me. And I also kind of journaled a little bit about how we as a couple kind of found our stride with travel, because this was really the first big trip we went on. We've traveled together before, but not like a super sightseeing trip, only like places in the US or Canada, which Canada, we live very close to Canada. So that's kind of like the US, like those are road trips for us, or like beach vacations where we're just sitting out by the pool all day. So this was our first like long distance sightseeing trip together. So I just journaled a little bit about that, which is something I like to reflect on in my travel especially. Is not just like this is what we did, but like how I was feeling and the overall vibe and like feel of the trip, and just like where I was at that point in time, mentally, emotionally, all of that, because I feel like that impacts a lot about how you see a place. And especially for a place like this where I'm not going to go there again another time in my life, or most likely won't. I really like those additional reflections. I am sorry, you guys, if you can hear a bell in the background. It is my cat, Pumpkin. He is playing with a bell as I'm doing this voiceover, and he just came in the room with that. So sorry about that. Anyways, now I'm moving on to the Vienna portion. And my hand again was hurting from journaling, so I was going to take a little bit of a break. And what I decided to do was actually dig into my travel themed chipboard pieces, and I picked one out to put on this photo of a castle that says "Around the World." I didn't want to overdo the embellishing, but I had used the chipboard piece that says "Sights and Sounds" on that photo of one of the castles there. So, or like it's the palace in Vienna. So I wanted to have another chipboard piece just to kind of balance it out. And I know that I also had that chipboard piece on the title card, but I think I kind of forgot about that at this point in time. So now I'm moving on to my journaling. This one that says "Making Sense of It" is where I'm going to journal about the Taylor Swift concert that never happened. The Taylor Swift concert that we had been planning for over a year to attend, that we got up in the middle of the night to buy tickets for, and, had planned this entire trip around, which did not pan out, but we still had a good time on the trip. So I started this journaling card with the word "ugh," and then I just did all of my journaling from there. So this was just about the concert and just the overall like feeling about what happened. And honestly, I kind of ran out of space at the end. I will definitely do another spread in my mini album about this event and what happened and how I feel about it, with probably much longer journaling. But for this spread, I felt like this was sufficient. and I ended up just going ahead and slipping those cards in the pocket. I did want to point out that I was slipping cards in the pocket here as I went. I don't typically do that while I'm working on Project Life. I tend to do that at the end because sometimes I will rearrange the cards or kind of, just add some final embellishments and stuff at the very end once I can see the overall spread. But in this case, I was slipping things into the pocket partially because I have that insert. So it's a lot to have out on my desk. And once I slip them in the pocket, I can kind of like push them to the side without everything shifting. So I tend to do that when working with an insert. But I also did it just because my hand was tired and I just needed a little bit of a break from the journaling before moving on to this card. This card here was just about the rest of Vienna and all of the other things that we saw and what we did, my friends that met up with us there that we were planning on going to the concert with but didn't end up going to the concert with. We had dinner with them instead and drinks and stuff and hung out. And so I just journaled all about that. And there's a photo of us in that spread there as well. So that is the end of the spread. But then I decided because I have an insert, I wanted to add a tab on it. And sometimes I do this after I get off camera, but I decided to do it with you guys here. So what I did, I'm going to add an Avery Index tab to kind of flip that insert. And so I pulled over my stamp organization and I'm looking at like the travel related ones to find some sort of sentiment that I wanted to put on that insert or on the little tab. And what I ended up selecting was the tab. It's from the Go story stamp, which is one of the very first story stamps. I want to say it's like number 8 or something like that. And I did 2 of them. One says see the world and the other says take me away. That stamp is a really good one with like sentiments to go on these little like tabs. And I actually have a page in my stamp organization that's just for sentiments to put on tabs. So I definitely could have flipped to that one instead. And I would normally with just a normal spread. But with this one, because it was travel themed, I decided that looking for a travel specific stamp made a little bit more sense. So I once I picked one from this set, I was just looking at the set to see what other one I should do. And I ended up stamping those 2 on there. And then I'm just going to slip that into the Avery Index tab and add that onto the spread there. And that will wrap this one up. Like I said, this one took me much, much longer than usual. But I really love how it came out, and I'm super excited to have both of these cities documented in my album. And here's a look at that completed spread. First the left side, and then there is a photo of the right side. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And as always, I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Thanks. Bye.